software behind it. And I get that it's annoying, and I get that it's... And two of my favourite people are in touch. One of them is cross with me, saying he's feeling judged, and I'm in a loving relationship with one beautiful daughter. I'm not married, and you're telling me that your relationship is better than mine. And my sort of two members of my top 5 listeners of all time club. The other one just sent me a picture of it, and he used to send me messages like that, saying, "Get over yourself, you great big Jesse," and words to that effect. And now has sent a picture of his own wedding day, saying, "You were right, I was wrong. I owe you £5." So make of that what you will. I do not know. Sophie's in Haringey. Sophie, what do you reckon?
Hi, James. Good to speak to you.
Likewise.
I just wanted to say that I find the notion of legal marriage highly unromantic. I think you can have a wedding and wear a ring without actually signing any legal documents. I think that's kind of too conventional. It's trapping.
I hear you, and I think once have bitten your head off, but of course the point is it's really unromantic to do something that's designed to make sure that you're not left high and dry in the event of being abandoned, because you're contemplating abandonment as you pledge your troth.
Right, but obviously you can be with someone for a long time and know their personality and feel that, and if you have a child with them, I wouldn't feel that they would abandon me if I didn't sign a legal paper.
No, I know you don't, but and it would be unromantic to contemplate that. But the difference between being married and not being married is that if you were in a relationship where the partner held the bulk of the financial power and the partner decided to do one, you'd be left high and dry if you weren't married. That's why the legal obligations are quite important, arguably.
Sure, but you can put some kind of protections in place, such as both having your name on the home that you live in.
And now I get to defend romance and say I'd much rather say to somebody, "Will you marry me?" than "Will you sign these protections, please?"
Right, but I agree with.
Do you go down on one knee? Do you go down on one knee and say, "Would you sign this contract and join me in protecting and safeguarding my own financial future, please?" Or do you go down on one knee and say, "Oh, I love you, let's get married"?
But I feel like they can be two separate issues. So I agree with the previous female caller who said that you can wear a ring and have a wedding without signing any legal documents. But then if you wanted at a later date or an earlier date to put any of those legal protections in place, you can still do so without this kind of archaic notion.
So one of the things I want to do
the legal protections you'd be putting in place would be archaic.
Sort of cover up this glitchy stuff that's happening.
They'd be under contract law, wouldn't
in front of it.
Yeah, but I don't think that's an archaic notion. I think that's kind of
so let's do that.
Well, where does the archaic? I'm getting my. Where does the archaic notion come in then? If you've had a pretend marriage, I mean that's pathetic, isn't it? I mean, you say I really object to these archaic notions, so we're going to do a pretend version.
There's water right in front.
No, because
that's not binding or meaningful in any way.
But of course, it's meaningful in that
it's meaningful because it looks like the real thing. I mean, it's a bit like saying that an Elvis Presley impersonator is meaningful, but obviously everyone would rather have Elvis Presley at their party.
No, but of course something can be meaningful without having any kind of.
And so this one is.
You realise what you did. You said, of course, something can be meaningful without having any real meaning. That's what you've been reduced to by your objection to marriage.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
because
where is it?
I think
Zero.
I think it's romantic and therefore meaningful to declare your love, to wear a ring.
Yeah, but it's even more meaningful if it means something. I can't argue about that.
But of course, it means something from a romantic perspective, but it doesn't mean something from a legal perspective.
And a real marriage means both. The real marriage has the romantic perspective and the meaning.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, but I still don't agree that that's necessarily. They don't equate. One doesn't equate to the other.
I'm sticking with my Elvis Presley parallel, I'm afraid. It's great to have an Elvis Presley impersonator at your party, and it's meaningful as well, particularly for massive Elvis fans, but everyone would rather have the real Elvis. So you'll say, well, of course you can have a ring and a ceremony and some hymns and some poems and some speeches, but it wouldn't actually mean anything legally or socially. It would just be a nice day out. And I'm saying, it's great, good luck. It's even better when it means something, and I win.
This PNG, whilst it's transparent, is actually you can almost see that it's blocking it.
That'd be rude.
And so we just need to set the
28,
material of the
Will
PNG
you ring me?
to
in
be
the coming years if you ever change your mind.
Of course I will.
have an alpha.
I hate to be proven wrong on national radio, so I don't know if I will.
Well, I want the call on the Friday
Test
before the wedding, right?
05.
On the morning when I'm walking up
And
the
then that should take care of
I don't know. I'm not on air on Saturdays.
of
at
the
moment.
alpha.
Don't give them ideas. Sophie, I kind of know. This is what cognitive dissonance feels like. Your points are powerful. Your arguments are sound.
There you go.
And the fact that I couldn't make my
And
own
so
without giggling suggests
it covers
that
up
somewhere
like the
deep inside I'm
glitchiness that
aware
was
of their
happening. You can
flimsiness.
still
But I
sort of
thought
see
the
it.
Elvis
It's
Presley
that.
parallel
But I
was
suppose it's like trying to
pretty cool. John's in Dartford. Might be the
trying to
last word.
mask
John,
it
what
as
would you
much
like
as
to say?
possible. And I'm just gonna
hello there. First time calling. You yourself in the show. So hello.
Welcome,
make
John.
it as wide
What's
as
on
the
your mind?
one
We've
at
only got about a
front.
minute, mate. So what did you want to say?
Quick one
So
then.
we'll make
Basically,
the
I've
width
been with my missus since I left
6,
school. We're now 28,
and the height
but we have an
6 as well. We'll see if that
baby,
works.
and we just don't justify getting married when we can't even get ourselves in the property ladder. You know, we've been in a council flat since we've been together, since we left school, and we just don't need that piece of paper to prove how much we love each other. You know, it's like we've been together
because
since
I've made it
school,
higher and
all our
taller, I need to
friends-
shift
So
it back
if you won
again.
the lottery tonight, you wouldn't want to get married?
Another.
It wouldn't be an essential. It wouldn't change anything in our relationship.
No, I'm not saying it did. I'm just asking what you would rather do.
To be fair, I'd rather get everything else in order. Like,
You've won the lottery.
It's
mate.
weird,
You've got
it's a little bit
113
magic
million quid in
numbery,
the bank.
but-
You can pay someone to get everything else in order. Would your partner want to get married, yes or no, if you won the lottery this weekend?
no, I couldn't answer you.
Well, what kind of a relationship? What do you talk about? If not, of course she would. That's a cop-out, John, and you know it.
It's more important things, you know.
I'm not
You come home
arguing
from
about.
work,
I'm not arguing about that. I'm just saying, if you had 113 million quid in the bank after winning Euro Millions the other night, would you or your partner want to be married? And you know that. You both
still-
would, especially her.
Yeah, probably.
Where the waves
There we go. End of
sort of
topic.
hit it, it's still a little bit glitchy.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
There's anything to
leading
do with
Britain's
that.
conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the Irish Prime Minister says the gap is very wide between the EU and
Wonder
the
if I lift
UK
it up a
on
little
reaching
bit.
a new deal on Brexit. Leo Varadkar says what they've seen so far on alternative arrangements to the Irish border backstop falls far short. But he feels Boris Johnson is acting in good
just up a
faith
little
in the
bit.
negotiations. Rory Stewart, one of the 21 MPs expelled from the Conservatives for voting to block a no-deal exit, has told LBC he'll likely stand as an independent candidate at the next general election.
Dominic Cummings and the Prime Minister, they have been pushing for a no-deal Brexit. They are trying to get traditional Brexit Party supporters, particularly in the northeast of England, to support
just
them.
see it
It'll be
underneath
very
there.
difficult for them to bring people like me back into the party who are arguing
see
for
it
a more
there.
moderate compromise.
The Prime Minister says he aims to reach a deal at next month's summit of EU leaders. A man has appeared in court accused of murdering his baby son, who died after being found in a river in Greater Manchester. 11-month-old
That's a
Zachary
bit better, right?
William Bennett
You can
Echo was
barely
pulled out
see
of the water by firefighters in
where it
Radcliffe on
touches.
Wednesday. Zach Echo, who's 22,
does.
has been remanded in custody.
But
A climate change group
Can't
says
really get
11
underneath
of
it.
its activists have been
We
arrested
can
this
go
morning
around
while
it
trying to
and
fly drones at
look at
Heathrow
that.
airports. But the action by Heathrow pause has caused no disruption to flights this morning. A man who was caught
Glitching way
after
less.
leaving his own bike, shoes and a phone at the scene of a burglary has been jailed for 15 months. Scott Parker, who's 44, stole designer handbags worth more than £4,000 from a home in Tunbridge Wells in Kent. Global's Make Some Noise Day is back in just 4 weeks' time. On Friday the 11th of October, LBC and all of
Kinda
Global's
works. And
stations
then
like Capital, Heart and
what I
Radio
might
X
do is I
are
might
coming
put
together
a
to help
couple more
change young
waves,
lives.
like
Since
just one
2014, Make Some
behind.
Noise has helped 224 small charities like Cassie, which helped 16-year-old Emily, who was a victim of violence when she was younger.
I've gone through lots of counselling before, but it didn't work.
This is
So
going to be a
we came
beer
to
map.
Cassie instead, and
Just
they
made like
basically
a
helped me
custom
put what happened in
marker
the past to stay in the
for a beer
past
map.
and not affect my future.
And stay with LBC for more details on how you can get involved. The LBC
be
Markets
good.
report a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was down 14 points at 73.29, and the pound buys $1.24 and €1.12. LBC weather, dry and sunny for most of the UK, breezy with scattered showers across western and
One thing
northern
I really would
Scotland
like
and
to
Northern
do
Ireland, a high of 21
is
degrees. From Global's
I'd like
newsroom for
to be
LBC,
able
I'm
to
Simon Conway.
Looking for a car you can rely on?
Like
Take a
reset
fresh
it would
look
be
at
good.
Peugeot. Voted JD Power's 2019 most dependable brand in one of the UK's
when it
most
comes
trusted
back into
reliability
view,
surveys. Now's the time
it
to put
starts
us
again.
to the test. Experience one of our award-winning
It's not
cars and enjoy
necessary.
an exclusive upgrade to Peugeot offer now. Visit our website for full details. Make sure
but
your next car is built with
I think
pride.
on the
Rediscover
initial
Peugeot
sort of start,
today.
have
Terms and
it
conditions apply.
fade
Offer
in.
available until 30th September 2019. For JD Power 2019 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
I don't know if I can get underneath it. Not really.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
Yeah.
3 minutes after 11 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien
So,
on LBC.
when it comes in,
if I
yeah, fade
get
it.
married, I'm not going to tell you because you'll be so smug. Says Wayne. Rubbish, mate.
So look at what
You'll want a Z
events.
list at your reception. Of course, you'll be telling me. And Gary makes a brilliant point. Someone who won the lottery tonight might well be filing for divorce by tomorrow, James. You make a very valid point, Gary, as ever. 4 minutes after 11 is the time, and we turn our attention next to this topic, conversation, story that is, I suspect, going to be bigger and bigger as the years pass. It's funny, some chats we have together during our time together every day, they sort of wane away as time passes. They become less and less important. Other topics you can sense building momentum and getting more and more important. I think this notion of human action to address climate change is going to be one of the defining issues of our era. It is also another, like marriage actually, area of policy and debate where age is profoundly relevant, not exclusively relevant. Oddly, one of the people that turned me on to the urgency of this issue is much older than me. It's the former American Vice President Al Gore, who we had the pleasure of interviewing on the programme, and whose 2 films on the issue have moved mountains in pursuit.
Let's get rid of this.
And speaking of age, if you told me when I was a kid that we would have really important people, people from the front line of the political establishment and the media establishment, funded by we know not who, of course. That's one of the big problems with this alleged debate, is that on one side you've got publicly funded science, on the other side you've got mysteriously funded lobby groups and so-called think tanks. But if you told me that you could turn on reputable radio programs and television programs and open otherwise reputable newspapers and find people arguing against the wisdom of trying to make our planet healthier, I would have laughed in your face. It shows how naive I was. And look, even if you have to still cling to the notion that the scientists have got it all or much of it wrong, and weirdo bloggers and think tanks who won't tell you who pays their wages have got everything right, then you have to entertain maybe just a 2% possibility that you're wrong and the scientists are right. And if there's a 2% possibility, then what's wrong with trying to make the planet healthier? I always work on the principle of risk. I spoke to the magnificent Martin Lewis, who will, of course, be running the Treasury when I take over the world, and about Brexit, in the run-up to Brexit. And he was characteristically cautious, The money-saving expert is the chap I'm talking about. But he talked about risk, and because, like me, he didn't know as much as perhaps he would have liked to know about the ramifications of leaving various trade agreements and treaties and organisations.
Hey.
But he just talked about risk and how ready you were for a risk. And I remember saying to him, we're on the train back from Celebrity University Challenge, believe it or not, and I remember saying to him, but
what I want
the
is
other side are saying that there's no risk. The people selling Brexit,
an
I know
event
we're supposed to be having
that
a
the
Brexit
market
free day, and we
gets,
will,
I
I
guess.
promise. The people selling Brexit are telling everyone that there will be no risk.
If you can do it.
And Martin said something to me along the lines of, but I mean, I'm not listening to them. I'm looking at it objectively and intelligently, and I'm seeing that there's a risk involved, and my decision will be based upon my perception of how big that risk is, because I don't really like taking risks. I hope I represented him correctly, and I think he wrote on the subject subsequently, and he was right, of course. But it didn't, for me, as a journalist working in that field rather than in financial journalism, I felt we had to accommodate the fact that the people on the other side of the argument, from so-called Remainers, were passionate in their insistence that there was no risk at all, that everything was going to be great, sunlit uplands. You remember? But no one lied to you. It's important, of course, to clarify that.